What is up, everybody? Newmer here with Abby. We are commentating the semifinals for Flower Fields Season 3. We're going to be watching Sugar go against TKC, aka Team Kitty, and we will be watching um, Ever Sleeping Round 1, with Sugar being the hunter in the first half, and we will be watching Team Kitty Cat be the survivors. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Abby.
Hello, my name is Abby, or you may know me as Foo Fighters in game. I've been playing the game for a bit, and I have been commentating some of the other matches prior, and it's mainly been with Noomer. And yeah, like Noomer said earlier, we're gonna start off with the Ever Sleeping Round 1 with Team Sugar going up against Team Kitty Cat Survivors. Noomer, what are you looking forward to seeing this potential Round 1 pick?
So yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate you asking me, Abby. So actually had the privilege of commentating Sugar's team the last matchup, and we actually saw this hunter play round one violinist, which was kind of almost a wild card, so to speak, which kind of allowed them to have so much room as far as opportunities and things of that nature of going into round two with any of the picks they could choose from, especially based off of meta. So I'm kind of curious to see, are we going to be watching the exact same thing occur in the semifinals, or are we going to see a different strategy occur with the Sugars Hunter? They also did switch out their Hunter to put in a secondary Hunter. I'm curious to see if that's going to happen today. I will say, after watching the Sugar Survivors, they are very strong and they do go based off of meta picks. So I'm kind of curious to see kind of what Team Kitty Cat's strategy will be. And yeah, we'll be loading straight into the game. What are you looking forward to, Abby, here with these bans
Well,
and
I'm
picks?
I'm still kind of really surprised we actually had a round one bio. I was unfortunately not there for that matchup, so that's actually kind of interesting. But we're gonna see the meta bans first with the Priestess and this year. I mean, I would love to see another round one Bad Eyes on Ever Sleeping because we did see from other teams just how much you can capitalize off of using Mad Eyes on Ever Sleeping. And we also did see the round one Percy as well, which actually did work out fairly well. But one of the hunters we have not seen yet, at least not that I can recall, and I would love to see would be a round one sculptor or even a potential round two to round three where you can really capitalize off of her on, let's say, a church. And we're gonna see a novelist lock and we're gonna see a mechanic lock, which with mechanic we'll be able to either use the bot to body block and extend the kite or to double decode. And we're also gonna have the novelist, which might just be the only support. Never mind, I lied. We're actually going to see a Walding as well. Very heavy support comp for this mechanic to try to help keep her alive and extend her kite as much as possible.
Yeah, and again, a few of the random or wild card picks you're going to see here is Priestess round one, so we will be expecting more than likely a non-meta pick, as well as a mercenary. So just seeing that pick and ban, you're probably more than likely going to see someone who struggles against harassment, or possibly even a hunter who is heavily coded in camping, because we're going to see another first officer ban. So they really do not want them to run double rescuer, which it looks like the team will not opt into that. We're going to choose perfumer, who is a safe pick, especially when you don't really know what you're going to go up against. And we're going to see everyone lock in. Abby, how are we feeling about these survivor picks?
Okay, I actually do agree with the perfumer pick because if this hunter does go the traditional meta and we do see the actual Goatman pick, this perfumer will actually go into it pretty well. But also perfumer with the old meta does go into it really well. So perfumer is kind of well rounded to all of these. Besides, I'd say Hullabaloo. I would say that perfumer tends to struggle into her a little bit, and more so your chip hunters as well. But I mean, I'm actually really excited to see the round one wildling and see exactly just how the harass goes, unless this hunter does directly want to counter this wildling and pick, for example, a gamekeeper who will just completely shut down the wildling harass entirely.
100%. And we do have to remember we are on Ever Sleeping, which one is more one of those more balanced maps. I know that's very arguable for a lot of people, but that and church kind of go hand in hand as far as a small map versus a big map. So you really have a lot of options here as a hunter. And again, I'm very curious to see, are we going to see another violinist, or are we going to see a different wild card pick? The thing is with Novelist's support as well as Wildling's harassment, this could be a deadly team comp, but it just depends on what gets chosen, and we're going to see a wax artist.
I honestly don't know because I have not played Perfumer many seasons. I don't know exactly how well she fares into a wax artist. And I mean, the thing with Mechanic actually is Mechanic can technically place the bot and have the bot actually eat up a lot of wax, so that can work out pretty good. And isn't, because I know you play Novelist Numer, correct me if I'm wrong. If you get a pallet stun, like if you use your book and get a pallet stun, don't you still get, I think it's roughly like 25 wax from the pallet stun?
Yeah, more than likely 25 to 50. It just depends on the situation or scenario, but yes, you will get
Okay.
that. So, like you said, you're going to probably see the drop and go mentality from the mechanic, which makes sense because it is a wax artist. And then, as far as the perfumer, that's going to be one of those weaker picks that more than likely the wax artist does want to chase just because she does feed presence. Though the long kite may be very beneficial for this team, you do have to remember the only thing that would be going for him is that wax artist is a snowball hunter. But more than likely, we'll probably see the mechanic get chosen as the first chase, just because she's one of those characters. Knowing if you do have a super long first kite, she can almost guarantee a draw most of the times than not. As far as these picks in regards to their builds, we will see Novelist actually run a Sui Tide build, and we're going to see everyone else bring Borrow Time. Very curious to kind of see what that thought process was. It looks like they definitely want to send in Novelist as that second, or even maybe potentially the first rescuer, more than likely.
Hmm.
Maybe even expecting a wax artist or someone who's strong to that caliber. So definitely kudos to this team, Kitty Cat, for bringing the double tide. It definitely would be a game changer, as well as they will definitely have good Cypher Rush. What are you predicting as far as this early game here, Abby, from this wax artist?
Well, obviously the main chase target is going to be this mechanic, and depending on this mechanic's luck and exactly where she does actually get to spawn, either she will be out completely in the open or be more towards the underside of two-story, which that would be more in her favor. And with that, she can immediately go upstairs to indicate some wax and then drop down to rotate towards S palette, which that, depending on the cipher layout, that might cause some issues for the perfumer cipher rush towards cabin, but roughly this, wait, where did the mechanic actually spawn?
The mechanic spawned under
Okay,
two-story, but you're going to see
okay.
her immediately
She
place
actually did spawn
graveyard,
more in the open.
which is actually not a horrible spawn. It looks like they're not going to opt into dropping the bot, so they're going to strictly use it to decode. Or not decode, I'm sorry. Oh, actually, they dropped it anyways. So they're not going to use it to kite. And it looks like the wax didn't even actually see it. So amazing job by this mechanic, Miss Americana, if I'm pronouncing that correctly here.
Americana, yeah. Unfortunately, drops the pallet on herself and is gonna opt into the first hit, and still has 72 wax, and so she's actually gonna end up being left at 96 wax, and this is gonna be a fairly early down. But luckily enough, there is still the bot out for the potential of decoding, because the hunter did not actually spot it.
Which is a good and a bad thing. The thing is the wax artist played this very well, getting that early hit and still having the wax on them. And at this point, it looks like he's just going to try to search or maybe potentially even wax off a Cypher. And there goes Wildling, staring at it and actually body blocked it like he was Shaquille O'Neal. Very interesting here. And it looks like they're not going to opt in for the rescue here on Mechanic. Potentially the bot may go ahead and go for a back door. And it does not look like the wax artist actually found it. And we're still going to see a 3-second
No, he
push.
actually did see, and unfortunately a terror shock.
Definitely a game changer here against wax artist. Like I said earlier, he is a snowball hunter. So him getting that full presence is a world of a difference compared to someone like, Hullabaloo, who somewhat is good after their first presence, or even someone like a Percy who really doesn't need much.
We're actually not going to see this rescue likely not happen at all because of the unfortunate first hit. The Wildling could have actually used the board to get in really early. Novelist is going to try to go in for the support and go for the save, but unfortunately the mechanic is actually going to fly away last second.
Fly away is the key word here. And there goes the full presence. Boom. And actually ended up missing the hit. Good job by the Novelist. We still do have Flywheel in play. And we're not actually going to see a blink because the hunter does not have it. They actually have warp. So with only 3 ciphers remaining, with one of them at 60%, they do still have a high potential if the flywheel would have came out there on getting a draw. But now it's going to be very, very hard due to the fact that one of the last 2 ciphers, or should I say 3, is going to be Dancing Geisha.
Yeah, unfortunately for these survivors, this hunter still does actually have the trait, and we're actually going to see him opt in to use the trait and go for this Wildling. And Wildling actually does luckily get on board in time and is not going to give that free down, but we're gonna see the perfumer go in and get a before half rescue right before this wax artist is able to go back and stuff it.
Which is amazing by this perfumer here. At this point, the best thing would just be to go ahead and perfume and body block the wax, but they're actually going to opt in to have him go by himself because he does still have flywheel in play. Ends up actually missing it. Amazing job by this wax artist. And unfortunate by the survivors here. Going to cheer on one of the last 3 ciphers. At this point, being down a cipher, it would be really, really hard to try to get a one-man. Again, guys, if you do not already know, the final deduction is not in play for this tournament as it was added in the middle of it. So we will have to potentially see a slugfest depending on how they want to play. They do know that dungeon is middle. The perfumer's going to have to go on Mission Impossible to try to get this rescue after half, and it does not look like she'll be able to end up getting it.
Yeah, unfortunately she did get cut off relatively early, so there's no way this is actually gonna happen. Unfortunately, she does not use her perfume and gets hit through the pallet and just is able to build up a lot of wax, and unfortunately just gonna die due to hot wax. And so now it's just gonna be ultimately a slugfest like Numer mentioned earlier, because there is no final deduction. And we're gonna see the wildling rotate towards corner house, which is a relatively strong kiting area, but the wax artist is already hot on his trail, no pun intended, and is already opting to get the chase, and he still has roughly about 700 wax, and he's just gonna be able to just keep on rapidly firing it at this wildling.
And a few things to point out is that Perfumer still does have self-heal, and Boar is going to be wasted to its max potential at 60 seconds. As well as keep in mind that if you didn't, catch on to what happened earlier, it looks like the Perfumer's flywheel did actually end up getting baited. And it looks like he's actually going to miss and doesn't actually get the hit on the wildling, so amazing job there as well. And then she also did get hit under a pallet, so amazing mind games by this wax artist. They're probably playing one of their best matches that we've seen so far. We're going to see if he can end up winning this mind game against the wildling, and he will, as he actually waxes off the cipher.
Yeah, luckily enough, this wildling does still have self-heal, but this is just going to be a game of just cat and mouse going between the last 2 final survivors, excuse me, just to keep on trying to down them until at some point they just can't keep on picking each other up and picking themselves up. And we're going to see this perfumer is opting into hiding from this wax artist, which is actually working out so far. Wax artist is not fully sure on where this perfumer is, but there is a possibility he might find out. And he actually is going to see her, but he does actually get pallet stunned, so this perfumer is going to just keep on opting to run towards cabin, but due to all the wax that this wax artist has, unfortunately, she's just going to go down.
And at this point, there's not really much that they can do. We will see the Sugar survivors go ahead and complete a 4K. Or I said Sugar survivors, apologies. Sugar team, go ahead and get this 4K, which is going to be very crucial. It's going to put a lot of pressure on this team Kitty Cat Hunter to go ahead and try to get this 4-man so that the round 1 ends up getting tied. That will be a 5-0 sweep as of right now. Very kind of curious to see kind of what Hunter we're actually going to see from Team Kitty Cat. And you're going to see the wax artist struggle to chase wildling here just because of how strong he is, especially when it comes to this end game. Abby, what are your thoughts with final deduction being in play for future tournaments like IVS, KOA, and things of that nature? Do you think we'll see a drastic difference in, that 4K long-awaited matches versus getting that one escape?
Personally, I do think there will be a drastic change, especially because what I have opted to see a lot of survivors do, especially like in ranked matches where final deduction is actively available, they will wait till the very last second to pick themselves up. And so once the hunter downs them, they will instantly die. Therefore, the other survivor who's remaining is luckily most times able to get the dungeon. But because of it being a tournament setting, most of these hunters will be expecting that to actually occur. And so a lot of times I've also seen hunters, they'll do the method where they'll just keep on picking up the survivor to make them struggle, but then keep on downing them. So that way it's just wasting time, but it's also not allowing them to sit there and just continue to bleed out. So I think it's going to still be a bit of a slug meta, but you can only slug for so long before the survivors are actually going to be able to just bleed out and then try to ensure that one-man escape through dungeon. What do you think's going to change with the meta once that happens and how tourney is exactly played?
Yeah, I think it was well said there as far as kind of what we're going to opt in and see potentially. So I'm really not too surprised. I think this is something they should have added a long time ago, as it does get kind of frustrating and aggravating, not just for the players, but also for the viewers as well, whether it's in person or watching online, supporting each and every one of their teams. It does get frustrating just seeing that, I have to sit here for 20 minutes before we see the next matchup. When in doubt, between the
Hmm.
matches, we already have to wait 10 to 15 minutes. Just a drastic change that I think was a must, especially going to be a game changer, especially just like how we're going to see these new builds take effect, which I'm very excited to kind of see what people rate S tier and what they don't, as well as,
Hmm.
jumping into uh, round one, second half. We're going to be watching, for those that who are, just showing up, we're going to be watching the Sugar Survivors go against Team Kitty Cat's Hunter. Very excited to see kind of what these bands look like. We will be playing on Ever Sleeping again. That will not change. And yeah, kind of excited just overall. How are you feeling, Abby, about this new collaboration that just dropped? I see a lot of people already rocking the profile pictures.
Okay, so I actually am using one of the profile pictures. I'm currently using the Priestess one. I personally, I think it's one of the better crossovers they've had in recent times. No offense to like, the Paper Bride crossover, any of the more recent ones, because I know they have been bringing back some of the older crossovers. Like, they brought back the Persona 5, for example. And I know people have been demanding or really wanting them to bring back Death Note, which I would be a fan of as well. But I'd say this is definitely one of the like better crossovers they brought into the game in recent times. One of my favorite crossovers personally was the Edward Scissorhands one back in like I can't remember if it was later 2019 or early 2020. It was right around in that time frame. I personally really loved that crossover because I do love that movie. Really good film. You guys should watch it if you haven't. But personally, I'm really excited about it. I started watching Freerun because of the crossover actually. So, I mean, hey, new anime to pick up and also new skins to get.
Yeah, I'll say it definitely was added to my list. I do have one of the manga books.
Hmm.
So I was familiar a few years ago. One of my actual friends recommended it to me, so kind of already familiar with the series in itself from reading that manga book. Of course, it was the first one. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Very excited that they have an anime that kind of just allows a lot of people who actually don't end up reading to jump into, you know, a
Hmm.
different form of art. But anyways, we won't yap too much about that. Let's jump into this second half. Ever Sleeping. We're gonna see Seer and Psychologist band, which is actually gonna be Psych is gonna be one of those wild cards that you don't really typically see often in round one as far as meta, but you definitely see a Seer pick. So we're gonna probably see this Hunter opt in. They still have a potential to play meta. They just may play people who, you know, don't necessarily like the kite to be extended due to either support.
Or the global heal as well.
Exactly, as far as the global Serial as well. And we're going to see Perfumer and
Yeah.
Mage get opted into. So, more than likely, these survivors are either A, knowing that they're going to go against a Goatman, or B, they're trying to predict something we don't know. We won't really be too sure. Let's see what this third pick is.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't remember what this hunter plays because I do recognize their name. I have gotten them in rank before. If I do recall correctly, I do believe they opt a little bit more into the meta picks. Again, I could be completely wrong and misremembering, but I'm 99% sure they opt into more of the meta. And we're actually going to see a mercenary lock after the FO ban. I'm actually a little bit surprised they didn't opt in for the Gravekeeper because with the potential Goatman, Merc does tend to struggle a little bit more because at least with Gravekeeper, you can negate that hit and you also can efficiently body block and also preserve your HP. While Merc, a lot of times I've seen a lot of Mercs, what will happen is the Goatman will actually opt to chase them and because of his elbow pad, he'll just keep on elbow padding into the cage. And we're actually going to see the Puppeteer band, which prompted them to get their decoder in, which will be a Pharaoh Lady.
Which is definitely going to be one of those wild card picks, really out there that we don't typically see. This is probably the second time I've seen her chosen. That first time was when I was actually commentating with Abby against a Mad
Hmm.
Eyes, also on Ever Sleeping. Now, a few things I want to point out statistics wise, guys, if no one knows. As far as round one picks, knowing you're going to go against a Goat Man, the hard ban slash picks counter wise, you're going to see Puppeteer, you're going to see Mage, and you're going to see Gravekeeper. Whether they're banned or picked, they're always chosen. So I'm very, very surprised as well, based off of what Abby said. I may have actually opted into a Puppeteer pick with the third one, and then left the fourth
Mm-hmm.
one up to a Grave or potentially even a Wildling. Or even a Merc is
Mm-hmm.
okay, but like, Abby said, he does struggle. But I'm very excited to kind of see what type of team comps they come up with because Faro Lady, I don't think she's been introduced into the meta yet, but we have seen her get chosen a couple times, so it's very exciting. And it looks like one of the viewers said that the Faro Lady is an S-Batch Faro, so maybe they're going to be showing us some amazing gameplay or techniques that no one has seen before. But they will be going against a Goatman, which actually Faro doesn't do too horrible against. It just very depends on where they're caught out at.
Yeah,
But
because
this
they do
Goatman
have
was
the
expected.
invisibility. They do have the invisibility, and I do agree with your comment on opting in to have that puppeteer for third pick and then just save the rescuer for fourth because worst case scenario, they do ban Grave and then you still have Merc. That way you don't have any rescuers global ban because the more you global ban your rescuers, again, the less likely you will be able to have them later rounds. But ultimately, Merc is kind of just a throwaway pick, so that's completely fine in my opinion. But yeah, I don't actually realistically know how Pharah will play into a Goatman. It depends on how accurate, or I should say probably how efficient these Goatman's cages are. And it also just depends on how much distance this Pharaoh has, because what the Goatman might try to opt to do is just put the cage right behind him, but still put it a ways in front of her. So try to catch her off guard, so she'll keep on running forward, and he'll just pop in front of her. That way, her invisibility will be just essentially rendered useless, and therefore he'll just get that free hit.
But yeah, going based off of just these spawn layouts, it looks like these survivors did win the first mine game. Now, keep in mind, Goatman is one of those hunters that builds up resentment. So it's not necessarily a huge devastating loss, but they do have a very, very good rotation as far as, having Mage as potentially one of the first kites is probably one of the strongest types they could have chosen. With Farl probably more than likely either rotating to the back of Graveyard or opting into going to the S palette cipher that will be locked more than likely. So I'm very excited to see the hunter still does have a potential depending on what the Far Lady does here. So we'll kind of just see. And like Abby said, it's a very character versus character gameplay that we're going to be watching here. Keep in mind, even if they chose Puppeteer third, they could have not even opted to get a rescuer just because in their current situation, they do just need to get a one man. So they could even ran Tide on Perfumer, but we're not going to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to jump straight into this match. I'm very curious to see how this Goatman plays, depending on whether they can get a down within 2 or 3 cages. Very excited though, nonetheless.
I wonder if this Goatman's actually gonna do what a lot of Goatmans try to do, is they're gonna try to catch that rescuer in middle by surprise, because most times the rescuers get like, oh, I'm a rescuer, they're not gonna chase me. And I'm wondering if he's gonna try to just get a sneaky, cheeky little first cage on this Merc and just try to completely jump scare him.
And it looks like the Goatman's actually not moving, and it looks like they might have loaded in a little bit late, but doesn't hurt them too much. And we will see them push away anybody who would be decoding middle, and it looks like they didn't find anyone. As Far Lady is sitting upstairs 2-story, he may opt into turning around. It looks like there is no communication yet in regards to who the hunter is chasing. And there we go with the slow vault, but the hunter actually ends up just going straight for her. Wins the first mine game. We will see if this Far Lady will get caught out. Does win that. Amazing job by the Faro. And actually ends up getting the hit. Amazing job by this Goatman. He still has another cage in play here, with potentially even a second one being used.
Oh. Unfortunately, we're going to see the Pharaoh get down because Goatman does go through the cages a little bit more quicker than the Survivor. And because of just the narrow, long hallway that she was confined to, she really ultimately can't go side to side at a 90-degree angle, which you typically do want to do against a Goatman. And so, unfortunately, this Goatman does actually have a normal, so we're going to see the potential of normal on this cipher, which this will be Magician cipher. And yeah, we actually are going to see
game changing, as it was a 70% cipher. So we're going to see they did have good cipher rush even with a 2 cage down, but at this point it doesn't matter. They are playing into the Goatman's hands or favor, so to speak. And there you go with the Miss Wand. Amazing job by this Goatman getting the hit and potentially another one depending on if the Sparrow can kite. And keep in mind she does have knee jerk.
she actually is mind gaming this Goatman a little bit. He is a little lost, and she's actually gonna run back into him, but he's still kind of fully not aware of where she is, and is just trying to ultimately follow the trail. And luckily enough, she's able to make this pallet, and if she could have actually potentially broken the cage right there at that fallen pallet, excuse me, but unfortunately that did not occur, and we're just gonna have to see her get chaired right again, right back on this Magician Cypher, who now has to rotate out because he is unfortunately 0.50 or half health.
And what we will see is the Mercenary opt in to go in for this second rescue. Did try to hide, but I do believe the Goatman did see him, so he's going to have to come get this rescue early. At this point, more than likely, saving the elbow pads would be the best option, but if he can last out this cage, he may be in a good spot. And he was able to last out the cage. Amazing job by this Mercenary. And there goes the potential Terror Shock, but it did not work out in the Goatman's favor. We will see the #1 Goatman tech be used there.
Unfortunately, we're going to see the Pharaoh drop the pallet on herself. That's unfortunate. And we're actually not going to see that Merc opt in to try double kiting with this Pharaoh to help assist breaking cages and keep her alive. So unfortunately, we're going to see this Pharaoh lady die with 3 ciphers remaining. Luckily enough, she did die in basement. That way she can pull away for her team and take up one of the chairs down there. And so we're going to see there is a final cipher that is getting decoded by, I believe it's the Perfumer in middle. And unfortunately, though, she is going to be the next chased, and we're potentially going to see that, we are actually going to see the Cypher get abnormaled once again. So they are a little bit behind on Cyphers due to the use of abnormal from this Goatman, which is very well played by him.
Yep, we're going to see Mercenary try to push Dancing Geisha, which was a 60% abnormal Cypher, as well as Middle getting 40% abnormal. At this point, him getting caught in the open, really can't use his elbow pads. Did try to bait the Hunter, and actually misses the swing, but it doesn't matter because he can go through it 9 times in one cage, as a survivor can only go through around 4 to 5 times. So amazing job by this Goatman. Potentially not going to opt into bleeding this Goatman out. Though they do have good Cypher Rush, Abnormal is really going to be the game changer here. So amazing job by this Goatman. And amazing job by the Pharaoh as well, dying in basement, trying to buy as much time for their team as possible. But potentially it may or may not matter. They will be able to pop this second story Cypher. And they still do have the 51% over there at Dancing Geisha, and it looks like they won't be able to pop it. With only 2 ciphers remaining. Very curious to see what this Perfumer is going to do. Does opt into breaking the cage. Eats the hit. And there goes the elbow pad.
Unfortunately, does still die though, however. And this Goatman is a really good example of why high mobility hunters like your Goatman or even like your Opera, a lot of times they don't need to opt in for that blink, and rather they will use that abnormal to just keep on pressuring those ciphers, because ultimately with meta hunters like that, as long as you don't get your ciphers done because of the abnormal, ultimately it's in a winning favor for this hunter. And we're going to see this Magician unfortunately get cut off pretty early, but luckily enough, though, he is actually wasting a lot of resentment from this Goatman.
An amazing job by that second wand that gets used in this game. And he's going to actually opt into potentially abnormaling and doesn't actually want to go for it. They do have 1 cipher remaining, and it is primed. So we will potentially see a 1-man occur. It really depends on how this Goatman plays the end game. Amazing job by these survivors, pushing as much Cypher Rush as they can, and it looks like Mercenary is going to end up getting hit. They will have to pop there. He still has an elbow pad in play, and Mage does still have a wand. And he actually was out of the cage, as this Goatman doesn't have any resentment. What will this Mage do here? Actually ends up getting hit under the pallet. Amazing job by this Goatman winning that mind game, as they're already working on the other gate. What will we see here, Abby? A potential 1-man or a draw?
This looks like a potential 1-man unless this Goatman stops this chase ultimately right now and actually opts in, because we do see he does have trump card, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's actually going to trump card over and stop this this gate from being open, with it actually being at 91%. So it's really close, but 2 of the survivors are over here. But ultimately this does actually allow the Magician to go open the other gate. So still, regardless, we're actually going to see 1-man escape likely happen. And unfortunately, there was the little black part of the cage, so this really good perfume. And so we're actually going to see this Perfumer be able to escape.
She ends up actually leaving, and made my heart race because I didn't know if she was going to be able to get out.
I know. I thought she was going to get blocked.
But Mage actually also had a potential win con there clutching dungeon, but they're actually going to be able to get this draw against this goat man. So amazing job by these survivors. More than likely opting into assuming that they're going to play against an Ivy with a type of team comp like this.
Mm-hmm.
But very, 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 very well played by both sides. And that's going to be a 2-2 in that second half, which will allow the Sugar team to win round one. Being up 5 points is definitely going to be a crucial. Very curious to see what they're going to do here going into this round two.
No, honestly, really well played because that Goatman did have, honest to God, like a really, really strong start, and he did have a relatively early down, and his abnormals were really good, but unfortunately, they just kept on spreading out those ciphers and dying away from the ciphers ultimately, which, if you know a hunter has abnormal, that's ultimately what you have to do. And due to that, it just bought enough time, and honestly, because he didn't abnormal that cipher middle, which I think he honestly could have, that would have been really game changing. And the perfumer also was very low health, but unfortunately, because he didn't, that cipher was able to be popped. And even though he did teleport to the gate that they were opening, they still were able to escape and actually secure that too, man.
Which again is very, very hard to do, guys, especially in a situation where the early chase wasn't as optimal as the survivors wanted, but it didn't matter. The Far Lady did an amazing makeup kite, as well as dying into basement was definitely a game changer. As well as their cipher layout and how they decoded it, you could tell that the communication by these survivors were top tier going against this goat man. And you could see as well that this goat man is not one to play with because he played amazing, using his abnormals exactly and properly where he needed to be. I think the game changer for this hunter was, do I push the perfumer? You could see that it was a little bit of a hesitation on that last cipher. Do I push the perfumer and use a cage, or do I commit to the chair? And I think in that scenario like that, I think the best option would have been to go towards the perfumer. But sometimes it's hard to know because he did have abnormal up as well, though it wouldn't have been as much. He could have chaired on that cipher and really changed that game and kind of stir those survivors to see if he could speed them up. But nonetheless, amazing job by both sides, guaranteeing a draw, and amazing teleport endgame, just knowing that there's no point in staying on this mage as I may even get three-manned. Amazing job. And even the cage at the end, Perfumer getting out, was really game-changing as we knew they were guaranteed a one-man at that point.
Yeah, unfortunately, like you did mention earlier, Nuber, that Goatman did not opt to abnormal that middle cipher that the perfumer was on, which ultimately I think that could have actually been like the like you said, the game changer. I think that's ultimately what should have been done, but a lot of times when you're in the heat of the moment like that, you start to stress out and you just ultimately just don't know fully what to do. And because of that, I think the hunter just didn't want that save to occur, and that was the main thing in his mind rather than abnormaling that cipher. Which I mean, if he did abnormal that cipher and like you said, chaired that perfumer on that final cipher, they would have had to start a completely new cipher, which one of the nearby ones was Dancing Geisha, and there was a graveyard cipher, I believe, as well. So they all would have been in somewhat close proximity, so that would have been a bit more in favor of the Goatman. But unfortunately, that did not happen. But still well played because the Goatman's early game was really well played against that Pharaoh lady.
And I 100% agree with you. And really, like I said, and like you said, really that game changer was right there just because though your trait would have been on cooldown for a while, the issue was is the graveyard cipher was only 51%. And at that point, you could put a lot of pressure on those survivors because you did have resentment building up after you would have caged Perfumer and downed her. But nonetheless, like I said, amazing job by both sides. We see their strong points, we see their weak points. Very curious to see what they'll opt into going into this round two. And we will see a Lakeside get chosen. Abby, what are your thoughts on that? Is Lakeside one of those top tier maps, or do you think that these teams have a strategy built around it?
Okay, so personally, I'm not a fan of Lakeside. I just personally don't like the bigger maps, but on Lakeside, depending on what you are anticipating, if they want to opt in, for example, I know survivors that do really well on Lakeside. You have your acrobat who does fairly well. You have your aeroplanist. Your toy merchant has really good spots, especially on Big Boat. And there also is your patient. Those are a bit more of the off meta picks minus the aeroplanist and the acrobat. But ultimately, those survivors do fairly well. Lakeside is their playground, honestly. And so we could opt to see some of those potential survivors. But in terms of Hunter, it honestly really depends on the hunter themselves because a lot of times I'll see a hullabaloo on here. We do see operas on here. You will see the Goatman, but Goatman unfortunately is permabanned. Or you'll sometimes see the more off meta picks. I have opted to see a lot of Percy's on here because it is a bit more open unless you're on big boat or little boat. And I have actually seen Nightmares on here. And Nightmare, even though a lot of people will laugh and be like, oh, it's a Nightmare, Nightmare does actually do fairly well. And I have seen a lot of survivors honestly just undermine him and just be like, oh, well, it's just a Nightmare. And because of that, it's ultimately their demise. And they do tend to unfortunately struggle into him because of a lot of Nightmares opting in for that double teleport. It's just, he gains a lot of distance. Not distance, I'd say he has a lot of more map pressure. What do you ultimately want to see on this map in terms of Hunter? Or what are you expecting, I should say?
I'm 100% expecting a Hullabaloo or an Ivy, but it actually looks like Hullabaloo is going to be banned. If those who are joining us now, we are going into round 2 on Lakeside, which was chosen by Team Kitty Cat. So it does look like the Hunter may have a strategy or is familiarized with this map. And we're going to see these same bans, and we're going to watch these Sugar Survivors play. And we see almost similar picks. From the first round, first half, we're going to see a mechanic, and we're going to see them actually opt into a meteorologist, which is very, very strong in this current meta, which was recently introduced as well. But more than likely, I'm assuming it's probably going to be an Ivy, who is very strong, or even an opera singer is a potential strong pick here. And we're going to see Grave get banned.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Merc was actually permaban, so they're gonna likely, if they do want to secure that strong rescuer, they're gonna have to permaban that. Excuse me, they're gonna have to permalock that FO, but they're actually not going to, and rather than they're actually gonna go for more of your more softer support, not support, excuse me, your softer rescuer, and your not main rescuer, which will be the Knight, who does have a potential to get chased as well. And if this hunter does decide to go something like Clown, Knight does tend to struggle into a clown because unfortunately you can't predict him out of his drill unless you either cancel it, like you get canceled with flywheel, or the hunter crashes, or the hunter just ultimately hits you. But we're actually going to see that patient I mentioned earlier, which ultimately he will do really good on both little boat and on big boat.
So yeah, this is definitely a map-dependent survivor pool picked, as well as how strong mechanic is with the drop and go, or just straight up raw kiting. With the team comp like this, due to what Abby said, the soft rescuer getting chosen, they will have optimal Cypher Rush. So this hunter will need to opt into a hunter who does have a lot of control pressure if they do want to keep up and essentially get a 4K, as they are currently down 5 points, but the main goal is just to win round 2, as this is a best of 3 currently. But I will say, as far as the Seer and Psychologist bans, those aren't bad. The Gravekeeper one, as far as Goatman being permaban, I really don't see the potential option with that. But that is a-okay, because maybe they're opting into a hunter who gets countered by Gravekeeper, and we will see the Antiquarian ban, which is going to be one of those more wild cards that we may not actually see an Ivy, as she actually does fairly well against an Antiquarian, but an Antiquarian nonetheless is a good ban. And as far as these picks, I think I'm more surprised than I am with the bans, just because you don't really see a lot of Patience anymore, as he has essentially almost fallen out of the meta and is very map dependent. And we will see an opera singer, which is fairly strong on a Lakeside, depending on how the early game goes. I know a lot of people do say that she's not one of the top picks on Lakeside, as Goatman is, but we are heading into round 2, first half.
Yeah, luckily enough, we're actually not going to see that Ivy be opted to play, which, I mean, that does make sense given the bans, because Gravekeeper and Seer do tend to struggle into the Ivy, but I do understand the Antiquarian ban because you just keep on smacking the Hunter, and you're able to actually use your flips as well, which that does tend to make the hunter struggle a little bit. And we're gonna see these survivors opt into just a more traditional spawn. Actually, no, we're gonna see the patient go down one, and we're actually gonna see the isolated spawn. Or never mind, no, we're not. They keep on changing, so we're actually gonna see that traditional spawn I mentioned earlier, with the patient being at Big Rock, the mechanic at Big Boat, the knight at Shack, and then we're gonna see the meteorologist at Little Boat, with the hunter spawning right in front of Big Boat. And so ultimately, what I think this mechanic likely will opt to do is probably just get a drop and run, especially depending on where basement is, because unless you're near pallets, it is a bit more tricky to do bot blocks, especially with Opera's hitbox, because sometimes her hitbox is a little wonky and they'll do the wide swings from like the side. And so a lot of times I have seen the Opera actually be able to swing through the bot and hit the mechanic's main body. But unfortunately, if that's the case, then the bot will not fully be utilized. But if this mechanic does drop this bot, however, and just keeps on running, it will allow for this mechanic to keep on decoding while she is actually on chair, which will help just keep on promoting a healthy cipher rush for these survivors, which ultimately that will be very good for them.
And keep in mind these builds, guys, everyone has borrow time except for this mechanic, so they are expecting her to get the first chase. So I'm very curious to kind of see what exactly will occur with a full Sui at Big Boat against Opera Singer, who does catch up fairly quick. And we'll just kind of see what they opt into doing. Very excited, though, nonetheless. And I'm very curious to see how this game will play out, as Opera may bring Blink or may even bring Warp. We won't know until it starts. And we'll be loading in now, as the Hunter has a lot of stress or pressure on them.
I wonder if this Opera is going to opt in for the normal play, but this is a bit of a bigger map, so they might not actually do that. And we're going to see the Opera just standing here, unfortunately, taking a second to load in. But we're going to see the mechanic actually opt in to drop the bot and just keep on running. And this Opera does unfortunately find the bot, therefore the mechanic's location will be alerted to this hunter, but luckily enough, this mechanic has actually made a lot of distance, and it's just gonna drop bot right over again and just keep on rotating towards what seems to be Crab Shack, or eventually just try to go to Shack and try to get some support from the knight.
It looks like that's exactly what the mechanic is going to opt into doing. I don't believe she'll actually make it, and it looks like the knight did it eventually too late. And we will see the Opera Singer opt into going around due to the knight camping the pallet. The Cypher Rush is looking fairly okay, as the mechanic has went from God's Green Earth over down to Small Boat. With the bot, I don't believe dropped. Did you see it, Abby? If the bot was dropped?
No, it was dropped actually. They dropped it at shore and hid it behind a pallet, and therefore we're actually going to see the blink be utilized. Therefore, the mechanic did actually luckily get the trade out, but unfortunately she did still die, and she is a little bit close to the patient cipher. But luckily enough, his cipher is about to be decoded, and we're going to see the bot in the distance already be ready at shore, and therefore is going to be starting the shore cipher to keep on keeping that cipher rush flowing.
And there you go with the flip back. Amazing job by these survivors. Though the support was lacking a bit, it does not matter, because this mechanic did a fantastic kite, almost a 3 cipher, with bot being completely on the other side of the map. So just an amazing job, and we will see this patient come in for the rescue, because he does have borrow time and tide. Will we see a double down? And we might even see a double down.
Unfortunately, this patient did get double hit and didn't use a hook to get away, but luckily enough, there is actually a meteorologist who can easily just use her rain to heal up this patient, just get him back. And unfortunately, this mechanic is going to be getting chased, but beautiful pallet stun, and the mechanic cipher is at 41% already. Therefore, they just need one more final cipher, and mechanic just can keep on decoding this cipher while she is still getting chased, actually.
An amazing job by this Opera Singer right now, and also as well as this mechanic doing a fantastic job looping this area. And it looks like this Opera Singer has not missed a dash yet, so fantastic job. And we will see more than likely a hit under the pallet. Amazing mind game and an amazing win. But we do only have 2 ciphers remaining, and one of them already being at 50%. Keep in mind, with a team comp like this, we still do have Knight who can come in with the tide rescue. And it looks like the bot is working as hard as they can over here at shore. Very curious to see what this Hunter is going to actually end up opting to do here. may be able to find the knight, which would be game changing, like that double down, which kind of guaranteed this almost a tie potential. Very curious to see, will this knight be able to support as best as they can? And it looks like the mechanic bot will die out.
Luckily enough, we already do have the patient though, however, waiting there. And unfortunately, we're not going to see the sword rescue used, but it doesn't matter because this knight does actually have Tide. And is just going to keep on helping, trying to support this mechanic as best as he can. And we're going to see the predictions used, actually. One of them being successful. But unfortunately, because it is an attack prediction, excuse me, it only lasts for like about a second.
What?
And somehow that actually swung through and hit the page.
It doesn't matter because they will be able to pop these ciphers. But it looks like the patient did not know that the mechanic had a SUG build, which will definitely be vital as no one is actually at the gate. And it looks like the knight wasn't able to support because they didn't have any abilities. And that's okay because it looks like they spread out very, very well, putting this hunter in a very sticky situation as one of them went to big boat. And we do have teleport being opted into play now. So I'm very curious to see, will they just commit to this knight who has no abilities and then go ahead and teleport over? Really, the game is up to this knight's hands as they will be abusing the logs pallets, forcing the hunter to break it.
Yeah, luckily enough, they actually do know where dungeon is, and therefore they do need to go for a potential dungeon play. It is located at Big Boat Ramp, and we're going to see this opera actually off the chair this knight, just going for that safe tie, and just going to hope that somehow their survivors, excuse me, are going to actually do the same and just play safe for the next following round. I'm still really confused, really confused on how at that pallet it literally swung through the patient and somehow still hit the mechanic, even though the mechanic was still actively running and still just a bit of a ways behind. So I'm really still kind of shocked about that. And that's exactly what I was talking about with Opera's weird hitbox.
And to be honest with you, I think that really was required and almost needed to guarantee that draw there. Because I believe if patient were to take that hit, it would have put them in a 3, opting into a 3 potential survivor escape. But amazing draw by this opera. Almost curious to see that instead of playing a little risky there and just setting up a clone and then teleporting and just counting 8 seconds and going back, maybe even being able to get a down. That point, like Abby said, did just opt into getting that draw and guaranteeing it, kind of just allowing these survivors to have, almost an option to get a draw, which would be perfectly fine going into the second round because that will be a tie and they would just need to win that third round and at least guarantee that 5-point lead to go ahead and make it a draw that may even have us go into round 4. But we'll have to go ahead and see. And they will opt in. The Sugar Hunter will go ahead and get substituted into another person who is their backup or second or third round picks. And we will see the Team Kitty Cat survivors come into play. Really needing to secure this draw. Even a 3-man would be very, very crucial and kind of change how this matchup will go. Abby, what are your thoughts? Do you think we'll see another Bonbon get chosen, or are we going to see something completely different as far as non-meta?
I mean, honestly, with that Bonbon, with his new buff and being able to just keep on putting bombs on the chair, therefore just making it to where the rescue just has even more pressure now. I feel like a Bonbon actually potentially could work because that way you can secure that safe tie, but ultimately you can push for more if there is a potential stuff on the rescue or someone is coming in and the survivor actually ends up just ultimately like flying away and blowing up because of the bombs placed on the chair. So ultimately it's up to these survivors and how well they play. They might just try to opt in for the safe tie, or they might try to push for more and just be more aggressive with it. I'm not entirely sure, but I would also really like to see a potential Wu Chang on this map as well, especially with the new persona tree changes and with just how much more he's utilized and just ultimately how much better I just see him being played because of the persona changes.
And keep in mind, one of the things to mention here, we're going into round 2, second half. The first half, it was 2-2. And we will be seeing Team Kitty Cat did choose Lakeside, so more than likely it may have been what the survivors had wanted to see. So again, we really have a high chance here at guaranteeing a draw depending on how they play. Very, very excited. I do believe that this hunter put them in a good spot. You know, just enough pressure, but not one to give up. So I'm very excited as we're going to be loading into the bans and the picks getting chosen.
What are you wanting to see in terms of a hunter on this map?
Well, based off of the Gravekeeper and the Priestess ban, I do believe we will see a non-meta get chosen. I'm always down to see a Clerk, and it looks like they're going to opt into the Breaking Wheel ban, which may have been one of their top mains, especially with a Lakeside map pick. But what do I want to see? Potentially a Clerk, because I do like her, for those who have not watched me commentate before. And I think Geisha wouldn't be a good pick just because she's not as strong, needing a guaranteed draw. But more so, I do believe Wu Chang would be a very good pick, but he is a snowball hunter just like how Wax Artist is. We do have a lot of potential. It's just really dependent on what these survivors choose. If they do go for a hard support team comp, I think Clerk would be the play here. But we'll never know until we see, right? We will see a meteorologist and a mercenary get picked. How are we feeling about those?
Ultimately, again, with we're gonna see actually a journalist ban, actually. So really surprising on that. But I mean, I'm personally I kind of like journalists, not journalists, excuse me. I like the meteorologists, especially with both her ability to kite, but she also can help support her teammates as well, which with that pushback, it can be really game changing, especially for if they're pushing for more. But ultimately, we're actually going to see the Seer Lock, which that will be more global support rather than more direct support, like the meteorologist. And so they're going a little bit support heavy with this comp, but also they're just gonna just try to extend that kite as much as possible because the longer you get that kite going, just the more better of a position the survivors are in, and the less resources they need to use in terms of their health, and also just it just ultimately just buys them more time. And we're actually going to see the coordinator. So this is actually going to be a really support heavy comp. And I really miss kind of the heavy support comp meta because we used to see, back in Koa 3 whatnot, we used to see a lot of forwards, and we also used to see a little bit more of walding. We're seeing walding a bit more nowadays, but you used to see a lot more of walding back in like the older meta because with the newer meta, he does tend to struggle a bit, especially with
The
the
newer
potential
meta or
Goatman
the
and
newer meta? I'm sorry.
newer meta. Okay, bro. With the newer meta, especially with that Goatman and that Hullabaloo, and even the Ivy who can scream him out of his dash.
Yeah, there's a few things I want to point out. First, these bans are very, very distracting. I don't know how Abby was even able to speak as we see a grave priestess journalist and a lawyer get banned. Now, for those who haven't got to see this second hunter go ahead and play Bonbon on Moonlit, they did get kited raw by a lawyer, so maybe they are a little bit traumatized. Or maybe they know that these survivors have a strategy with it. I'm not really too sure. But as far as round one and even potentially round two, as far as meta picks, I do believe Abby is correct with that heavy support. We don't really see that as often just due to the fact that the sheer fact of the matter is it's hard to even kite 60 seconds going against a Goatman, Hullabaloo, Ivy, and an opera singer just because of how strong that chase is in this current meta. Very, 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 very hard to do. But nonetheless, we will digress and see what this hunter will actually opt into choosing. We may even see a gamekeeper, and that will be locked.
We're actually see the gamekeeper. Who do you think he's gonna opt in to chase for this team comp?
I do believe that Sierra will probably be the best route, but it does depend on what they bring. They do want to run an excitement. They do have a potential to chase coordinator if they don't shoot gun early, or there's meteorologist. Meteorologist is one of those characters just because she's introduced to that new meta. People are still kind of getting used to her, but she is very strong. Where she comes into play and where you'll see her shine the most is in Big Boat, right? With how many continuous loops that get chosen. But they're actually going to opt into potentially an isolation spawn pick. And that's exactly what they're going to do. For those that do not know, this is exactly what you want to do when you want the Big Boat to be chased. or the hunter to make a decision, as they won't be able to lock many ciphers in a situation like this.
Yeah. Luckily enough, we're gonna see this meteorologist actually opt in to be safe, and they're gonna spawn this seer at Big Boat, which luckily for these survivors, I should say, the thing with a lot of survivors that do tend to struggle on Big Boat, it's because you can't ultimately see where the hunter is exactly. And so a lot of times these survivors will end up getting mind gamed, but because Seer does have that little ability to where he can see through like a little slight elevation, or he can remotely just see a little bit farther than the average survivor, he actually will opt in to not be mind gamed as hard. But because of this gamekeeper might actually try to run peepers to chase on Big Boat and try to ultimately just shut down this Seer from kiting there.
And keep in mind, the meteorologist will be running a SUI, so we will see that they do want to opt in to at least guaranteeing a draw, or at least a one-man, to not be as down as many points as they currently are. They are down 5 points, guys, so there is a lot of pressure on these Team Kitty Cat survivors. But I did not expect to see a gamekeeper get chosen. But he is very strong. He's very straightforward as well and easy to play. And none of these survivors really get countered except for Seer. But will he opt into actually chasing Big Boat? Let's find out.
He's either gonna opt in likely to chase Big Boat and just run peepers, or he might try to catch, again, this rescuer by the element of surprise, because a lot of times what these hunters will do, especially because I have been that merc before and have had a gamekeeper opt to chase me, and it's because a lot of times when you're going to use your elbow pad, a lot of the times the gamekeeper is actually able to just hook you right out of it. And we're gonna see this gamekeeper actually opt in to chase this Seer, but unfortunately he does not actually have peepers. He does have, I believe that's excitement, if I recall correctly.
And it does look like he actually was able to see the Seer early. And keep in mind, you do not get the owl only after the first 20 seconds of the match, and he's going to get a early hit. So amazing job. And he is going to actually get pushed out of Big Boat, but he will take Ram. I'm very curious to kind of see what the idea or mentality is behind this. Maybe just waiting for that Seer owl to get back in play. And there it goes. It finally comes back, but it is too late. It looks like the Seer is just trying to bait and waste as much time as possible. And we will see a basement here as well. Amazing job by this hunter early game. Very unfortunate from the Team Kitty Cat survivors, with the Wanna being on court.
Yeah, we're actually going to see the Merc, who does have Tide Turner, go in for this first save, because it is actually realistically very difficult to stuff a Merc. Even though, but the thing with Gamekeeper into Merc, however, is if you do get hooked and then you do get terror shocked, unfortunately you will instantly go down. You don't have the delayed effect, but Gamekeeper actually did not see the Merc coming in just yet, and we're actually going to see this Merc get the free save, and he's going to opt in to wait in the basement to try avoiding that double hit.
Which is an amazing job. Most strategies that you actually see. And it looks like he's going to opt in to try to get that full presence, as that will be game changer for Gamekeeper. And you're going to actually see him get stuck on one of the traps, so he will guarantee the full presence. An amazing job by this mercenary, not actually getting seen in basement, and is actually still hiding there, which is very unique. And that is a-okay, because they do have 2.5 ciphers down. At this point, the best option they could do is rescue again, because this Seer does still have Owl and Flywheel in play. But no trade has been forced, so they do not know that this Gamekeeper actually has excitement.
Yeah, honestly, I don't blame this hunter for running excitement, because you have a meteorologist who can push you back and technically put you in a slight stun, and also we're gonna have a coordinator who, if you just shoot her, she just uses her gun, and we're actually gonna see a missed hook. Therefore, the Seer has a beautiful owl and is able to just keep on extending his kite, and we're gonna see this Merc opt in to try body block.
Oh,
Gonna try to go for the drop hit, but unfortunately misses, and so we're just gonna see this Merc take the hit, just try to buy the Seer more time, and honestly just try to give him that more distance. But unfortunately, this Gamekeeper is full presence, so he can just keep on infinite hooking. Luckily enough, misses the second hook, but hits the third hook, and unfortunately does down the mercenary. And because of this, the Seer does still have distance, and is just gonna rotate towards the shore pallets.
that did just get updated and modified. Now, keep in mind, guys, this Seer does still have Flywheel in play, and they almost have an Owl, I would have to assume here. I'm very curious to see kind of what happens. And we are going to see a
This is
fly
the
will
fly
come into
roll really
play.
early.
Amazing bait by this gamekeeper. And it does not look like they were able to get that owl on time. I do believe that after the seer, owl, and big boat, the best option would have just to let the seer die and allow the Cypher Rush to be as best as possible. But I did definitely see the vision here, as it would have been harder to guarantee a draw. And it does look like the gamekeeper is going to miss his hook, which is going to be crucial, but we will see the trump card switch into blink, guaranteeing the survivor who has no self-heal to be able to get downed. But they will actually be able to pop a Cypher. So if this gamekeeper does opt into the chair, which it looks like he will, they do have a high chance at getting a draw just due to the blink being chosen. An amazing job by this mercenary, kind of changing the game by that gamekeeper's potential mistake. As we still have Cord's gun in play and no more excitement, they will be able to spread out as far as possible, knowing where dungeon is as well as this mercenary still having an elbow pad. I mean, they do have a high potential at getting a draw. I'm very curious to see what they'll do here.
Honestly, the Cord might just opt in to shoot so they get a safe pop, but we're actually not going to see that. We're going to see the hunter just opt in to just hook the survivor, and unfortunately does get trapped, but because of that, we're going to see this Cord use her gun efficiently. But because this hunter does have addiction, we're going to actually see this merc still be stunned, and we're going to see the coordinator actually go for the pallet stun. But I don't know if that was the correct play, because unfortunately this merc does have no self-heal, and this coordinator is just gonna have to kite for her life, but with no item or anything, she unfortunately is just gonna die. So this looks like a guaranteed 3-man for this hunter.
We're gonna have to take a step back here, guys, and talk about this. Though the gun was necessary, as the mercenary did get trapped and did not see that, the pallet stun was not actually opted into until after the mercenary was hit, which was a very crucial mistake by these survivors, as that did guarantee this gamekeeper a draw. And at this point, Meteorologist's best route is just to wait for detention to end up going out and going in for the rescue, as they will lose this best-of-3 matchup if they do not get a draw. Everything's on this Meteorologist right now, as she still does have tied. And it does look like the game's open.
Actually,
the game's open. And ends up
does get the
using
pushback, but unfortunately still dies.
Yeah, ended up using it a little bit too late. That was a complete game changer that we did not see by this second hunter. Amazing job by this Sugar team, turning the tides of a match that looked like a guaranteed draw into a 3K, which we have not seen in a long time. Amazing job by the Sugar survivor, you know, not necessarily hesitating and capitalizing on these Team Kitty Cat survivors making those crucial mistakes when it truly mattered. Abby, how are we feeling about a 2-0 sweep, advancing the Sugar team to go into the finals?
Honest to God, I'm really shocked. Like, I'm just genuinely shocked. I don't know if I expressed it properly during that matchup, but I was just really, like, I think they should have just opted. If they wanted to play it safe, they should have just opted to use that gun right away after that Cypher pop. And that way, just efficiently just make sure no one gets hooked, no one gets hit. And it also, with that BT speed boost, they just would have been able to run away more efficiently. But unfortunately, the Merc did run right into a trap, and the coordinator wanted to help try supporting, but I think ultimately she should have just let her teammate die and just push the gate. That way she still has gun for gate, and she can just make her way towards that gate, because the Merc does have no self-heal. So ultimately they're just going to let him sit, and they're just not going to pick him up whatsoever. So that was a slight mistake, but again, when you're in such a high stress situation like that, I do understand, because I had been there, and you just don't take a lot of that into account. But honestly, the gamekeeper really capitalized off of it. Even though he had such an early quick down, the ciphers were still technically enough, just the survivors unfortunately outplayed themselves there at the very end.
And that'll be it, folks. We will be having the matchup for the semifinals start here soon, so we will end the stream, so we will allow them to go ahead and potentially join. And so you may see another stream here on the Flower Fields, and we'll try to end it as fast as possible. I'm Noomer, that's Abby, guys, and we appreciate you guys for coming to the semifinals first matchup.